Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. Today I'd like to discuss who would win in a fight among the Dragonets of Destiny. In this analysis, we'll be pitting the Dragonets of Destiny against each other to see who would win in this free-for-all. Place your bets because this will be an interesting fight. Okay, to make the scenario seem believable, we're going to say that an animus dragon was responsible for this fight. By this, I mean they enchanted the Dragonets of Destiny to fight each other until one is left standing. There are a few things we need to look out for when choosing the victor. We're going to assume that each Dragonet knows each other's strengths and weaknesses. This means that there will be no surprises among the Dragonets. Ultimately, this fight would have to come down to who is most bloodthirsty, but also the smartest in engaging fights. This isn't a hard criteria to follow, it's just something to consider. We're going to be looking at each character's traits and tactics. These will help narrow down our choices for the winner. I'll give you a rundown for each fighter, and then I'll give my own personal opinion at the end of who will win. Our first contender is Clay. He has a very typical Mudwing skill set. Like his tribe, he can breathe fire if he's warm enough and is very strong. Clay is larger than most of his contestants, really only competing with Tsunami with his size. Although he does make for a bigger target, he is compensated by having a tough exterior. With a sturdy body, Clay can pin down smaller opponents for easy slashes and fiery attacks. His appearance can also help him in muddy areas or savannas because of his camouflage. Mud can also have healing properties if he is submerged inside of it. Let's step away from his physical traits now. What does he do when he fights other dragons? We get a perfect example of his fighting style in Queen Scarlet's arena. In the arena, Clay has to fight Fjord, a captured Icewing soldier. Although Clay's combat experience is summarized as minimal, he is able to pin down Fjord. He was able to do this because Fjord was trained in fighting against Mudwing tactics. Clay's fighting behavior is mixed, probably using tactics that Dune and Kestrel used against him. This means that Clay can adapt to his foes and use unexpected advances to catch him off guard. Although he was able to do this, the only reason why he deflected instant death was because of Starflight. Somehow, when fighting an Icewing, Clay had kind of forgotten that their Frost Breath is deadly at worst and debilitating at best. Clay forgetting how other tribes fight could be a serious detriment against 4 different tribes of fighters. Brute Force could work, but not if you're fighting against someone as tactically adept as Glory. Not only that, but Glory was the dragon who bailed him out of the fight against Fjord. When the Icewing pinned Clay down, Glory used the distraction to use her venom on Fjord, saving Clay. We can argue that Clay was distracted by his empathy. During this fight, we don't care about feelings, so Clay wouldn't be taken aback by his emotions. His pure strength and ferocity would allow him to take on anyone who was smaller than him. With all that said, Clay wouldn't be the smartest fighter on the battlefield, but he would be the strongest. His stature and fireproof scales will allow him to maintain his presence in a fight. Let's hope he doesn't forget his friends' tactics and their natural abilities, or else this would be an easy fight for his opponents. Alright, how about Tsunami? Tsunami is a Sea-Wing princess who possesses all the powers that Sea-Wings have. Like her brethren, she can breathe underwater and can swim faster than other dragons. Additionally, she has scales which can brightly light the area around her. Although this is mainly used for communicating underwater, it can be used for visual impairment. Tsunami's tribe can also see in the dark, probably one of her most useful traits. Having night vision can definitely help if the fight occurs during the night or in darker areas like caves or overgrowths. Tsunami has blue scales, which makes her camouflage potent when fighting near water or flying in the air. She can use the sky as camouflage provided that it's not night or during a sunset. In the book, Tsunami claims that going inside water is very beneficial for her, but we're never told if it heals her. Stepping away from physical attributes, we've seen Tsunami in numerous combat scenarios. Beginning in Queen Scarlet's arena, she helped Starflight fight against scavengers. She also won a match against her father, so she can definitely fight her own tribe if she wanted. But she's fighting different tribes, so let's find other scenarios where she's fighting dragons apart from her own. She's attacked a Skywing Guard and a Nightwing, but that's about it. We also have an extract in the Dragonet Prophecy where Tsunami is incredibly confident in beating Clay in a fight, or at least able to withstand more combat than him. Ultimately, Tsunami has an impressive set of skills in terms of combat power. Not only does she possess an extremely useful blinding ability, but she has the fighting prowess needed to win a fight. And that's Tsunami. But how would Glory fare in this fight? I'm sure everyone knows that Glory is not your average Rainwing. Although the Rainwings were perceived to be a purely peaceful and seclusive tribe, Glory helped change that fact. Like all Rainwings, Glory has the ability to change the color of her scales. Most importantly, Rainwings can shoot venom from their fangs, which acts as a corrosive against living matter. This weapon is in no doubt incredibly deadly in the right hands. In fact, we've seen Glory use her venom several times in books. Most of these instances, however, the enemy was unaware that Glory could use her Venom Strike. Because the Dragonets know each other's tactics, every one of them would be aware that Glory's venom is extremely dangerous. They would most likely keep a safe distance from Glory, knowing that she is an immediate threat. There is one thing that could help close the gap though, her color changing scales. As many of you know, Rainwings can alter their scales to blend into the environment. We've seen this happen many times in the series. It was most prominent in The Dark Secret. This was when Rainwings launched a stealthy operation to retrieve their captured allies. Glory could easily camouflage her scales and shoot venom from a safe distance while being hidden from her attackers. I guess the only downside to this is a scenario where she's teamed up on. Although she can be camouflaged while shooting venom, the venom itself is not hidden. What the Dragonets need to do is find out where the venom is coming from and Glory is revealed. This is a very unlikely scenario, however, if everyone is enchanted to be ferocious towards one another. I imagine each dragon would fixate themselves onto one target at a time. That being said, Glory has a staple of tools that she can use to easily win a fight. Let's move on to Starflight. Like all Nightwings, Starflight has dark scales to blend into poorly lit areas. This can be very useful when fighting at night or in caves. Being a Nightwing means that Starflight can also breathe fire and also has access to night vision. Although, night vision would have been useful if he wasn't blind. Because Starflight is blind, I imagine his other senses would be heightened. Despite the fact that it would be incredibly difficult to identify his target, he can still use his fire breath to retaliate. It is very unlikely that the Dragonets would give him a chance to gain his senses during battle though. Unfortunately for Starflight, it would be very unlikely of him to win this free-for-all, especially in his condition. Starflight would need to rely on his instincts and memorizing his friend's tactics. By adopting a defensive stance, Starflight can easily deflect his foe's attacks. Subsequently, he can counter a direct assault, depending on who is attacking him. Because he has studied dragon biology, all he needs to do is attack a vital organ and his enemy would perish. It's an incredibly unlikely scenario, but if his enemies make the wrong decisions, they can easily die by the hands of Starflight. Last but not least is Sunny. She's the most interesting out of all the competitors because of one thing. In the books, it's incredibly obvious that Sunny is not your typical Sandwing. In fact, she's a Nightwing-Sandwing hybrid. It explains why she doesn't have a poisonous tail barb and why her coloration is so odd. However, she is still able to breathe fire like any other Sandwing, more on that later. Compared to her competition, she's the smallest Dragonet, which would make her a likable target. However, in many cases, we've seen her escape several different situations. In The Brightest Night, we see Sunny flee from her Nightwing captors successfully. We even see her friends use her tactics to fight back when they're dealing with a bigger target, as seen in The Lost Heir. Other than her physical capabilities, we've touched on the fact that she can breathe fire. In The Brightest Night, we see her burn a small hole in order to escape Burn's letter room. Because Sunny is accurate with her shots, she can easily identify weak points in her enemies and exploit their weaknesses. By burning accurately, Sunny can deal heavy damage while not expending as much energy. This can be useful against tougher opponents who are much larger than her, especially Clay. I imagine Sunny using her small size to expertly dodge heavier attacks, slashing her opponent when she gets the chance. Because she is such a small target, she can easily evade Glory's venom and fiery attacks from either Clay or Starflight. By evading her enemy's attack, she can easily close the gap and strike a vital organ with her claws. Now comes the verdict. Who do I personally think is going to win? Well, I can confidently say who won't be winning this fight. As much as I favor Starflight, he isn't going to be winning this battle at all. He has the biggest disadvantage out of all of his opponents, and I feel he's going to be swept under the rest in no time. Fourth place would go to Sunny. Although I had an illustration about what Sunny could do in a fight, it's all just hypothetical. All it would take is one misstep and she would be obliterated by anyone other than Starflight. If she did have some battle experience, I believe she would think outside the box in many scenarios. She would be targeting the most vulnerable opponents and outsmarting the rest. Third place is surprisingly going to Clay. When I was first writing the script, I thought Clay would have been at least second. But then, I realized how many advantages every other character has against him. There's no doubt that Clay has the higher survivability of his opponents, but that would just make him a glorified punching bag when he's blinded, poisoned, and clawed at. Unfortunately, his big size just means that his attacks will become much slower than his opponents, which frees him up to be attacked himself. It was really hard to place first and second. As much as blinding the enemy and surviving underwater is useful, it doesn't beat camouflage skills and venom. That's right, I believe Glory would be the rightful winner in this fight, with Tsunami coming second. Who should battle next? Maybe the Arc 2 protagonists? Maybe some queens? Who did you think would make the top spot? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more Wings of Fire, and as always, thanks for listening. Because the Dragonets know each other's tactics, every one of them would be aware that Venom's glory